So, welcome to the Seven Dimensions of Wellness. This episode will talk about one of the seven dimensions: spiritual, physical, emotional, career, intellectual, environmental, and social. Tonight's dimension will focus on a little bit of everything, honestly, because our guest has immersed himself in the seven dimensions of wellness. He's a voice actor, singer, teacher, filmmaker, YouTuber, and a mental health advocate. So let's all welcome Will Akana. So, hey man, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, Jerome. I appreciate you having me on. I'm all about mental wellness. Me and my sister were both very big on mental health. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you. So I guess we can start things off by talking about your latest single, Time. So what is it all about,
Yes.
man?
So I wrote Time when I was in Los Angeles at the time, and I'm turning 30 next year, and there's a big thing in culture, especially Western culture, and developing cultures of we need to be somewhere, we need to create what we need like right now, and we need to be who we need to be like right now. Even in schools, when you have to declare a major, what are you going to do when you grow up? There's just so much pressure, especially in social media now, where you see people in your field who are already excelled at everything, and there's a large comparison culture essentially. And so time is about it doesn't matter. You have time now. Everyone, the way I see it sometimes is that life is a whole classroom, right? It doesn't matter what age you are. We're all in different classrooms, so to speak. So this guy might be in a relationship classroom. This girl is in a finance classroom. We all learn things at different time periods. And so I wrote Time as a sort of way of trying to tell myself that it's okay. You just figured out how to really produce music, how to really get these songs out there. And it's okay. Like, there's time to develop what you ultimately want to do.
What I've noticed when I listen to your single multiple times, honestly, we also played it in the podcast every
Thank
Friday. What really resonates with me is that whenever you say, I have time, I got time, it really hits differently because the people in my life mostly tell me that they don't have any time. And I kind of figure that when you tell something yourself repeatedly, you really embody and convince yourself that, oh, sure, I don't have any time. I don't have any time for this. I don't have any time for my family. I don't really have enough time for my friends. So whenever you say, I got time now, I got time, it's kind of like a mantra. Was it your subtle way of telling people that this is my mantra? Like, you got time. You really have time.
I love what you're bringing to it, because totally we grow up hearing I don't have time so many times,
Yeah.
that it's almost like a negative mantra. So I love what you're saying, that like, because even having to do vocals on the song, like I got time, like I was like, this feels good. like to say to yourself, there's some type of cellular intelligence that can hear, the projections of your voice, or at least the resonances from sound waves. This is getting kind of spiritual, but that's part of the dimensions of wellness, right?
Yeah.
It's something about saying it does something to your subconscious that sort of frees you up a little bit. So to answer your question, I would say I wasn't thinking it was a mantra at the time, but definitely I would say for all intents and purposes, it was.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Because when I recommended this song to my friends and the people who, drops by to the podcast, they kind of ask themselves by asking me, like, is this Will's way of telling his audience, spend your time wisely?
I would say, because I'm turning 30 next year. There's a lot of time that I've spent in my life that I would consider, and many people consider, maybe wasn't spent wisely, right? But all the same, when I look back on all these experiences I've had, they amount to something in the sense that I can feel my artistry with it. For example, I feel like I've wasted a lot of my life, right? So it comes to a point when I'm 29 years old, I just really learned how to produce music. Like, do I still have time to do this? So in that sense, it's like no matter if you've wasted a lot or feel like you've wasted a lot of time, at the end of the day, time is all you still have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like no matter what, there's a way out because you're in control. That's I think where I lend myself more to this song.
That we are mostly in control. Because I have to be honest with you, man. Like, before the podcast, I haven't really tell you like how old am I, and a lot of people are surprised by it. I'm only 23. 23 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Young 23. Okay. The flex.
Thanks, man. Most of the people in my life like are not really 23-year-olds as well. I like to immerse myself in different types of people, like subculture, and then like different type of age groups as well, because I realize that as we grow older, like I'm not that old yet, but I feel old. We do have time. And speaking of time, how do you make time to get yourself started with the goals that you have in mind?
How to get started with the goals I have in mind.
Yeah.
Well, I think first and foremost, first of all, props to you for having this at 23 years old, having this foresight of being like, I should immerse myself in other types of like modes and areas where I can grow. I think that's awesome, because some 23-year-olds are like, I'm 23, I'm off to the bar. It's Saturday. You know what I mean? Like, so very good on you. The fact that you have a podcast, by the way. But how to get started on goals. So I had an idea in my head that I wanted to star in a sci-fi movie, just because I saw a movie called, I don't know if you've seen this, Jerome. Have you seen the movie called Valerian?
Oh my God, yes!
Yeah, so it's a sci-fi movie. I really enjoyed that movie. You remember it, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I do remember like the plot, but not the details like explicitly. Like, not as I know of Star Wars, because I love Star Wars. But can you tell more about it, man?
Yeah. Well, that may reinforce my point, because I felt like the lead actor, I found myself sitting in the theater thinking, oh, he could have done this. Oh, he could have reacted this way. And just sort of was a backseat acting driver, so to speak. And since that day, I had it in my mind that, well, you know what? I would love to be an actor. Well, I've always had an interest in acting, but specifically I thought I want to play a sci-fi character, a lead, and I want to do it justice, right? So coming back on goals, it wasn't until 2 years later where I thought to myself, no, that's your goal. Like, I guess for a long time I thought to myself that was such a big goal. I shouldn't write it down. I should just sort of keep it myself and maybe I'll do that. That sounds like a great idea. But one day I decided to tweet it, because I saw a tweet from an Olympian, essentially, saying that, oh, by X year, I'm going to be an Olympic champion, blah, blah, blah. And they achieved that goal. And in celebration, they screenshotted what they wrote on Twitter. So I wrote on Twitter a couple of years ago that my 10-year goal was to become a lead in a sci-fi movie, right?
Yeah.
And just from starting from that giant goal, all of a sudden my day-to-day like subconscious brain began to like pull up different ideas. I began to think differently. I began to look at roles as like, okay, not what are they paying, but how difficult is it? How will it challenge me? And will it make me a better actor so that in 10 years I'll be more prepared for that role? So I would say when it comes to starting out your goal, start like with your deepest dream on something ridiculously big. Because now that I have that 10-year goal along the line, I created a 5-year goal. By year 5, I should be in short features, like independent features.
Mhm.
And now that I have that 5-year goal, I have a 3-year goal. Okay, so now that I know I should have a theatrical agent by the year 2022, and you keep what I've accumulated from guys who know what they're doing when it comes to goal planning. You keep breaking down things into smaller chunks until you realize, okay, oh, this week I should have this many auditions in. Oh, okay, it's today. Okay, I should audition for this today. So having a giant goal sort of informs everything else in between. It makes it you basically know what the blueprint is. Does that make sense, Jerome?
Oh, yes, it does. And what I really like about it is that I personally experience of having a giant goal. And like for example, my giant goal was to, of course, become like a communications trainer in a very early age, and so I did. Now, in between, I didn't really realize that I was taking the necessary steps to get there. But now that I have started reflecting, I have more time. Speaking of time, I have more time. I really did realize that it is a blueprint, and just like what you said, have a giant goal, break it into smaller chunks, break it down, and it informs everything else in between.
Absolutely, because I think having the audacity to first set the goal will set your mind to processes that will work, that you don't have to be constantly working at, because your subconscious will begin to help you out.
Exactly. And I do want to bring something up that a lot of Filipinos, a lot of Filipinos love to say whenever they want to dream big, is that they always keep on repeating themselves that I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna make it, and they always explain it by saying this is the law of attraction. Now, the law of attraction is such a huge like thing for a lot of people, because like you visualize what you want and then you keep on repeating it. So I do want to acknowledge that there is a major problem that Filipinos, most especially most especially Filipinos, experience, and this is the mañana habit. Are you familiar with that?
Can you go into it? I think I'm vaguely familiar with the mañana habit.
All right, sure. So the mañana habit is a term, all right? Is a habit that we just do things later. Like for example, if you're gonna ask me to, hey Jerome, are you down in talking about the podcast today? I'll just say, you know what, I'll do it later. And sometime later, you'll ask me again, and then I'll keep on saying, you know what, I'll do it later. And it's kind of like the Filipino term of procrastination. Like I'm avoiding things just to say like, oh, I'll just do it later. Yeah.
So are you asking if do I practice the mañana effect as well?
Yes. Yes. Have you experienced it before?
Oh yes, totally, all the time. And I've wanted to produce music since like high school, and I only just started like a couple years ago. And so it was literally over 10 years, and I was like, you know what? I've wanted to sing and make music for so long. During the pandemic, I have time. I'm just gonna focus and do a little bit at a time every single day. And I know that there's like it's like a how do you beat procrastination type of thing, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you can, honestly. I think you get to a point where you procrastinate so much, where if it's really important to you and the stakes become really high, and all of a sudden reality really sets in that like, oh, if I don't do this now, I might never get a chance to, or I might get my butt bitten off, but that's a different type of procrastination situation. That's what I've seen. For me, what I've done, what I've quote unquote done to overcome procrastination. I mean, if it makes all of us feel better, even the great, what's his name, Hans Zimmer, right, the composer.
Composer.
I took his master class, and He even admitted, so after lots and lots of procrastination, and I finally sit down in front of my keyboard, then I start to compose. And so when he gave off the intro like that, I thought, okay, even the greats, even someone like Hans Zimmer, who's literally doing music for Batman and
Yeah.
007, we all procrastinate to some extent, really.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the how can I say this? It's one of the things that I really need to work on, because I tend to be tough on myself most of the time, that when I procrastinate, I feel really, really unproductive. And it kind of goes back by saying that I have to be productive because I mostly feel useless when I'm not being productive. So whenever I find myself procrastinating, I really take into mind, like, what can I do with this time that can also help me with the goal that I want to achieve. Like what you said earlier, like have a giant goal, break it down into digestible bites. And it was honestly a huge help, because somewhere down the road, again, I'm just 23, I did realize that even the greats like also have a lot of struggles. And one of the things that I also realized as well by having that is that people tend to, quote unquote, maybe glorify is another word, but they really look up to their idols as if like they're so perfect, like, oh my god, you're so perfect, I want to be just like you. But like, here's the thing.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like, here's the thing, we also tend to fall down. We make mistakes. And I remember you sharing a bit about that during one of your Instagram live sessions with Ria and Funkle Jazz, is that whenever you post something personal, you tend to get a few viewers, like the reach is like so low, but you know these people really actually care about you. But when you post something that's very attractive or very lively on Instagram, they, there's a huge reach when it comes to that. So I think that's one of the many reasons why my people, like the Filipinos, are doing the Mañana habit, is that because they tend to compare themselves. As you've said earlier, there has been a comparison culture to other people as well.
Right. I think sort of starting from a place of like hopelessness, like, oh, there's no way I could do that, I can definitely see exacerbates any mañana habit present for sure. It can be difficult, which is why I think social media, it all the more inspires responsible use of social media. It can be difficult, but it
can be. Oh, dude, I do have like a question about you, because I did hear about that you're Japanese and you're like a little bit of Filipino. Is that true?
So I'll just tell you my specs as a human being.
Of course.
My mom is half Filipino, so she has a whole bunch of family in the Philippines, and then half white, because my grandma hooked up with a Navy sailor on base or something like that in the Philippines. And then my dad is half Japanese, half Hawaiian. So I am a quarter of Hawaiian, Japanese, white, Filipino.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay, thank you for clarifying, because it has been confusing, like to remember. Like, okay, I know Will is Japanese. Is there any chance that you know any? Is there any chance that you know any Filipino words though?
Like Tagalog?
Yeah, Tagalog.
I know salamat po. I know sige.
Yeah.
Which is go ahead, right? Sige.
Yep.
I know how to say son of a you know what because of my mom. She would swear sometimes when we were kids when she got mad. I know tubig, which is water.
Yep.
But my knowledge of Tagalog is not as great as my French or Japanese.
I got you, man.
Are you full Filipino?
Oh, yes, I am. But I am still trying to immerse myself with our family history because I did learn from my grandma that my great grandma was Japanese. Like they like basically like my great grandpa hooked up with this great yeah like a Japanese woman during the Filipino War with the Japanese, and then they kind of
Yeah.
like became a rebellious love for each other. And I'm still yet to confirm because like I need to talk to other family members. Like, is this true? If this is true, I'm a quarter percent. I'm a little bit of Japanese. A
Oh
little bit.
wow. Yeah. Yeah, a little bit of that rebellious elopement from Japanese and Filipino girl.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, man. Okay, so
Uh
dude,
huh.
speaking of our culture and all that, I really want to ask because we're talking about like banana habit, and this is something that you have really showed your audience that this habit really helps. So I want to ask, how big of a help is journaling now that you have been doing it for a lot of years already?
Oh, it's pivotal,
Mm-hmm.
without a doubt. Capital P. Like, people say therapy is great. I've been in therapy. I can't really speak on how great therapy is because I haven't been in therapy for very long, maybe like a couple weeks at a time. But journaling is something else, man. When it comes to the benefits, it's incredible. First of all, because all of these things that are going on in your head, once you give a concrete, tangible medium for those things to exist in, there's a subconscious effect where your brain suddenly feels like it doesn't have to hold on to it as much because it's like, well, we have the information down if we need to reference it. I know that sounds kind of vague, but if you're going through something very stressful, for instance, and your mind is going through a bunch of like simulations, like, oh, I could have said that, and did she mean this when she said that, and like, oh, tomorrow I'm gonna do this. Those kind of X and Y, like what if scenarios. If you take the time to write down those things and explore those quote unquote time in your head, you'll find not only clarification of the situation, but you'll also see it in new ways that you wouldn't have been able to see it by just thinking about it. The act of writing it down opens different doors of perception about things that you are grappling with in your head. Just one specific benefit, because I know I can go on and on.
Yeah, thanks, man. Cause I did learn something recently about Stoicism. I've been studying Stoicism for a while now, and one of the things that I also realize is that whenever I want to write something down, I often ask myself, do I have time to do it? Again, it all goes back to time. It all goes back to time. But
Right.
I'm the type of person who really tries my best to have contingency plans. But if I ever find myself stuck in a situation, I want to write it down. Like, for example, like right now, my struggle is to balance my responsibilities as a son because I live with the family, my sister, and all that. And I want to balance my responsibilities as me with my career. And whenever I try to look at my journal, like what is stopping me, it does bring me new perspectives that maybe, just maybe, I can approach this differently. Like for example, if
Mm.
because my mom likes to boss me around. Like son, like can you clean this? Like typical Filipino mom. So that's okay. I love my
Oh,
mom.
oh yeah.
Down to earth.
Mhm.
So whenever she asks me around to do things, I assure myself that I will finish this like within a certain amount of time, so that I can also do my task, the personal things that I want to do, for the remaining of the time.
Mm.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I see. And you'll use writing this?
Oh yes, yes. So it's like other than the habits that I need to do for a daily basis, like for example, like I need to be productive for an hour I need to clean the house. I need to plan things for the podcast, like every single day.
Mhm.
By the end of the day, I kind of write things to myself that this is what you have faced today. These are okay. Those sort of affirmations that everything's gonna be okay. Tomorrow is another day. You can bounce back from this.
Oh, wait, so to clarify,
Sure.
when you reference stoicism, do you mean in that at the end of the day you will use, because I know stoic practice is sort of journal at the end of your day and reflect on what went well and what didn't so that you could improve in the future, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's like I have to boldly face the struggles of my life.
And I think that's awesome that you look at these struggles as a sort of like a target, right? Because I think oftentimes that we get so sucked into the movie of our lives that we view these obstacles as like these giant things to overcome. But even the simple practice of journaling can sort of reframe those things as not obstacles, but rather puzzles to like sort of solve in different angles. For me, how I use journaling these days, I use it to vent a lot, and oftentimes people will say, "Well, journaling, that's a whole thing. I don't want the effort of like having to like write sentence and grammar and blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And to that, I will say, oftentimes, if I'm like really upset or, just have a lot on my mind, I will write in stream of consciousness or stream of conscious, as they say, where it's like, oh man, had a bad day. What was she thinking when she said that to me? It sounds like I just broke up with someone. I did 3 months ago, but I guess I just keep using that same example. But sort of. Yeah, so I guess I use my journal a lot to deload, but I've found it especially useful to sort of like in the way that you're using it, I anticipate from when I was gathering, sort of looking at what you were wanting to accomplish, what came in the way of that, and perhaps what you can do better next time to sort of work around that issue. I think journaling gives us an opportunity to sort of take a step back of our busy lives and really just give ourselves permission to look at it from a very quote unquote objective persona and be like, well, what actually could I do? Because I often think that we're so swept up in the fast pace of our lives that we don't even give ourselves permission to sort of be like, well, okay, hold on. This is the whole pie. What's the best way to break this up?
Yeah.
And if I didn't do a great job of breaking up this pie today, what can I do better tomorrow?
Exactly. My goodness. And I really like the way you have said it, man, because I think this is what we need to hear. Like, my audience needs to hear. And this is because we tend to get stuck on things. Again, like the most common question we get from the podcast is like, Jerome, how do we get unstuck on things? Like, how to do this, how to do that? Like, I want to feel motivated. And it really goes back to, of course, time.
Mm-hmm.
It really goes back to time. And how you allow yourself to take a step back, and then try to see things in a different perspective.
Totally, because I think one of the things about that gets us stuck, like even procrastinating, we're not absolutely certain on our values, Like if your mom, which you love, even if she tells you, like, I don't like clean the dishes, all this stuff, you'll do it because you love your mom. I love my mom too. I do the same thing. Mm-hmm. But it's like if she needed medical attention, that's so important to you, you wouldn't procrastinate on it. So when it comes to our dreams and our careers and the things that we want to do, it's oftentimes so out of reach, we don't recognize how important it is to us. And we allow all these other things in our lives to sort of take up space on our mental dashboard. So to tie in how journaling helps, it makes you really realize when you sit down, it makes you realize what's important to you. And if something is very important to you, and if you're writing down like, oh, this stuff sucks, this stuff distracts me, this stuff, I don't get to do it very often, but I'm noticing that when I do get to do it, I feel like on top of the world. By creating these experiences of realizing, oh, this is what makes me feel alive, it helps you motivate and it helps you get unstuck just by a shift in perspective, not even in like a you can do it kind of motivating way, but like a no, this is actually like what I want to do right now. That kind of instance.
Exactly. And thank you so much, man, for bringing that into perspective, because I personally struggle with those, especially with the you can do it attitude. Like, yeah, I just like I'm feeling something, and then I tend to like push it down with positive things that I know to myself, this isn't gonna help me. So it all goes back to
Yeah.
having a strong grasp of your values. So I really, really appreciate it, man. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Will. Oh, and speaking of habits and values, I did remember that one of the lyrics of your song is that all of my habits I knew were wrong. And I guess this kind of reflects on the journey that you have, that, all throughout these years. Because you said that you're about to turn 30. Happy birthday, man. I know it's a long time. It's probably next year. But you know how Filipinos are. If we know someone's birthday, like, oh yeah, happy birthday. Yeah. Anyway,
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
thank you. So, what are the other habits that you'd like to share for the audience that maybe they can try out because it has worked for you?
Sure. Okay. So, first, I need to preface everything by sort of saying something bold and spiritual that I believe, right?
Oh, sure.
Well, it can sort of start out scientific in that you've heard of Tibetan monks and scientists wiring their brains to machines and measuring out their vibration, their conscious vibration, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my philosophy goes about, well, if you're able to raise your conscious vibration, then all of a sudden you're in resonance with a reality that's of higher vibration than you were vibrating at a lower vibration, right?
Yeah.
And so our habits can work as anchors to sort of develop our conscious vibration. For example, if back in the day I used to eat tons and tons of processed food and a lot of junk, and I'm sure it affected my conscious vibration, and it gave me the ideas that were resonant with that type of density. I might be getting a little too far off the deep end, but let me get on to the good habits. So the habits that I noticed that helped me the most when it came to conscious clarity and being able to stay on my path, that is, on my purpose, was meditation, first and foremost, because you begin to acquaint yourself with just being and breathing and not constantly commenting on reality. That's number one. Eating clean, that is eating foods that nourish you, right? Hydration. I read a whole book, Jerome. I read a whole book on water, and it talked about how if even you were 10% dehydrated, cortisol levels, the stress hormone in your body, would shoot up to a certain extent to actually create a mental slow, in a sense. They've done studies on this, where even if you're a little bit dehydrated, it has an effect on your mental performance. So there have been accounts in these outskirt villages of these doctors or these shamans who would just give their patients water. And they would have them sit down and have them drink like 20 to 30 ounces of water within a span of like 20 minutes or something. And a lot of their ailments would disappear. So I guess when it comes to habits and instilling habits that sort of set you up for success, these really small things that you're doing, like just getting enough water. Can you imagine being in a state where, let's say you had to write a few topics on the podcast, Jerome, and you weren't actually feeling up to it. You're kind of feeling anxious or whatever, and you decide, maybe you want to check Instagram for a couple more minutes or something because it'll help you feel a little bit less alone, right? Because you're anxious. Well, just intaking enough water would have bypassed that whole situation where you felt good enough that if you had the inspiration and be like, oh, I should work on the podcast right now, you just run with it. These small things that we do every day adds up into those kind of small moments that will lead up to things that will keep us aligned with our purpose. So meditation, I know I listed just three. Meditation, food, and hydration are, I think, the top three biggest things that I can think of right now.
Oh, okay. Thank you, man. And what I really like about it is that when you mention meditation, eating clean, of course, and then hydration, it kind of spells out an acronym of meh. And this is how you avoid feeling meh. Yeah, meditation, eating clean, hydration, meh.
Yo, that is some patent level stuff. I love that. Oh my god.
Right, so like how to avoid feeling meh, like meditation, eating clean, and then hydration. I just remember that before I tried out your meditation, like the 1% thing. I remember asking you years ago, like, do you still have a copy of it? Then you said like, oh, it depends, man, because iTunes and then the internet, the blog that you had like was already taken down. So I was like, let's see how it goes. Yeah. So you were.
Wait, that was you?
Yeah, that was me, man.
I did not know. Oh my gosh. And I gave you a copy, right?
Yeah, you did give me a copy, and then I did eventually lose it as well because I lost my phone at the time. And then when I asked it again, you did recommend a new program that you are also trying out. I forgot what it is though, but yeah, it worked.
Gotcha. I take it you didn't stick with it.
Just for a while.
That's okay. I didn't stick with it either.
Thank you. Okay, so dude, last question for tonight. We did talk about this before the podcast. So like, in what way or forms are you reaching out to people to create mental awareness? Yeah.
I see. I think when it comes to reaching out specifically, I don't have like an intention as I did before to, create a program, disperse it, create an app for mental awareness, disperse it, which I've done as we referred to outside of the podcast before we started recording. But I think anytime you're with people in general is a way to teach. You teach by being, essentially. And like I find myself, I'm one of those kind of guys where if I'm at a party or if I'm in a circle of friends, I'm super aware of how everyone is feeling. Like if someone says like an offhanded comment that was kind of edgy, I know who was uncomfortable and things like that. And so I'm the kind of person who will shift the conversation to like a more comfortable area, unbeknownst to people. So I would say, to answer your question, the way I primarily sort of create mental awareness is in the way I interact with people. And then also whenever I go on Instagram lives, and that's when I love to talk about spiritual nature of reality and like how, the Western cultural civilization has brainwashed us into not feeling like we're enough, and ways in which we can feel like we're enough again because that's our natural state and that's our birthright, things like that. Mm-hmm. And so I would say just everyday being and my live stream on Instagram whenever I'm on, which you've tuned into quite a few times, which I appreciate, man.
Yeah. Thank you. And I do have like a little secret to tell you, because back in I think, what year is that? Okay, let me just check my phone. Yeah, back in 2017, like this was years ago, I remember tuning into one of your live streams before, and you were rocking a different type of hairstyle. I remember asking this question, and you entertained it, thankfully. I did ask if you still play League of Legends, and at the time you told me that you were in the process of trying to let this go because you have immersed yourself in countless hundreds, if not hundreds of hours in video games, especially World of Warcraft. And I did message you afterwards, and just a little bit of appreciation. You did show some love back, and then I did show it to one of my friends. And my friends told me that next time, ask him to blow your mind with a random fact. This is such a spontaneous question, but here we are 5 years later, maybe. Is there any random fact, like maybe just one, that you want to blow us with? Oh my god, I should have rephrased it differently. But yeah.
You're asking me if there's a mind, if there's a fact that I have that can blow your mind right now?
Yeah, like anything. Like, do you have any?
I mean, well, I have to preface by saying everything that I'm saying is just my opinion.
Yeah, of course.
But according to the spiritual lessons that I've, you know me as a spiritual guy over like the decade or so that I've been purporting on Instagram and stuff like that. Consider this. Right now, you think of yourself as doing what you want to do, right? Like for us, instance, we're talking. You're sitting, you're looking at a screen, talking into a mic, etc. Well, what if I told you that at the exact same instance that you decide to do something, that's the exact same instance that the universe also decides needs to happen. So it does you at the same time while you do it. And at any given moment, in any time, you're working in perfect harmony with the universe to manifest exactly what needs to happen at this moment of time and this piece of existence right now. And it is sacred, whether or not you're aware of it. It is sacred.
Because we have time now. So see, like
we have time now.
Exactly. My goodness. So this was really nice, man. And what about you, man? Do you have anything to impart our audience with before we wrap things up?
Oh, wherever you are, wherever you're listening to this, you've got this. Like whatever you're worried about, I know it sounds like incredulous. Who does this guy? This guy doesn't even know me. It's going to turn out okay. Okay, you've got this. It's going to work out.
All right. Thanks, man.
That's what I got.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Pretty cool, man. Thank you guys for tuning in. The show notes and everything that is mentioned in this episode will be posted very soon on our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/runaway podcast, facebook.com/runaway podcast. So subscribe to the podcast, share the podcast, run away with Runaway Podcast. Thank you, Will. I'll see you soon, man.
Thank you. Peace out.